So I'm going to be showing you how to harvest wheat by hand or any other small grain, pretty much. I've got a grain cradle here. It's like a scythe. It only has one handle on it. And then it has the big blade, but it's got these fingers. And one of the fingers is broke on this one, but it still works. And what you do is, when you swing this cradle, the blade cuts it off at the ground and the fingers carry all the grain together, and you can carry it over and dump it in a pile. And when you dump these in a pile, you come back through and gather them up into the size bundle you want, and you take some of the straw and you tie them in what's called, I guess, sheaves or stucks, they call them. And that's how you can then stand them up in a shock in the field to let them field cure for a few days, and then you can then handle them with a fork or by hand to haul them in to the barn or wherever you're going to stack them to get ready to dry them. The first time that I ever heard anything about growing wheat, my daddy told me about it. And he was just a little boy when my grandpa and my great-grandpa was growing wheat over here on the other creek from where we live. And that's back in the 50s. That's before everybody started buying their flour at the store. And that wheat, they'd grow it on the hillsides, that red Clausen. So as the cradle comes around, what you want to try to do is dump the grain. This wheat is a little on the thin side. So I have to make 2 or 3 swipes, and I try to dump 2 or 3 swipes in one pile, and I can come back later and make one bundle out of it. But if you've got heavy wheat, usually one swipe and dump it, and that's a bundle. But this wheat's not heavy, so I'm going to show you how you swing and you try to dump it as evenly in a pile as you can. It just takes some getting used to how to handle the cradle, just some dexterity and that repetitive motion. Well, they say 1,000 times to learn a repetitive motion, something like that. So that old red Clausen wheat is bred, I think, about 1889 up in New York by Mr. Jones. And that's what everybody around here growed, as far as I know. And it's a soft red winter wheat. They'd use it for biscuits and stuff like that. But they'd grow it on the hillsides around here. And they'd cradle that stuff in the summer, shock it in the field, and let it stand there and dry for a little while. And then they'd haul it in and stack it. And this is all information from my daddy. He told me all this. They'd haul it in and stack it down there at the edge of the field there at my great-grandpa's. And Daddy said the thrashers had come, sometime later in the year with a thrashing machine. Old Grant Metcalf down here at Petersburg, he had a thrashing machine. He'd come around this area. About everybody, every area had thrashers that would come around that time of year. They'd just go from place to place, farm to farm, thrashing wheat. And they would stay with you when they come to thrash your wheat. You had to put them up and feed them. And they'd stay there and thrash your wheat. But Daddy said they'd come. And now here's an old picture of my great-grandpa standing up on the wheel of the thrashing machine they used. I don't know when this was took, but it was way back in the olden days. And if you've got some weeds in your wheat patch, it causes you some problems. But that's just life. Life without problems is a life without victories. They would start getting that wheat out of the stack, and he said there'd be rats running around that stack because they'd come in there, and gathered up where that wheat was so they could eat on it. And they'd thrash that wheat with that old thrashing machine, and they had to feed the wheat into the top of it.
and it'd go down through the machine and it'd separate the grain off of the straw and kind of clean it a little bit, and it'd come out a spout on the bottom of that machine. And they'd put it in sacks as it come out of the thrash machine. They'd put it in sacks. Daddy said they'd haul it down at the big barn there at Papa's, my great grandpa's, and he said my grandpa would throw them sacks up into the barn loft up there. Now this is the old barn that my great grandpa's. There's a door under that shed up into the loft where Pa would throw them sacks of wheat up in there to keep them.
And when you want to tie a bundle up, get it gathered up, get you a handful of the wheat. I catch it with my left hand up next to the heads, and I divide that bunch into 2 equal parts. And the way I like to do is I like to point my right hand, my fingers at my left wrist and reach through. And what you do is you come around, twist up and around, bring what's in your right hand around the back, pull it like this, and it binds on itself like that. You can lay it down. I like to lay it down like this, push it down tight, bring each side up, pull them tight, twist it around. It's a little hard to tuck in itself, so I usually just tuck it back inside the bundle of wheat fairly tight like that. All it has to do is stay together till you get it stacked, which that's a lot of wear and tear. But so there you can see is a stuck or a sheave, I guess, and that's ready to be shocked in the field. This is so dry, I'm gonna go ahead and haul it in, so I'm just loading it on a trailer.
I'd throw them sacks of wheat up in the barn loft and get up in there, and Daddy said that old barn, it was built by my great-grandpa's uncle, John. That was a John place over there where he lived. And Daddy said they had big old wheat boxes up in that barn loft. Daddy said there's big old wide boards. I think he said one board would cover the whole top of the box, probably poplar. I don't know if it'd have been chestnut or not, but anyway, he said them great old big wheat boxes. He said my grandpa would pour them sacks of wheat out in them boxes, and they'd put the lids on them to keep any bugs, I guess, or any rats out, keep their wheat fresh. But I reckon that natural wood, them big old boxes up in that dry barn loft with all that airflow going through there, it kept that wheat in good shape. And Daddy said Pa would go up there maybe on a Friday evening and get a sack of that wheat out of the boxes, sack it up in a sack. And on Saturday, he'd take it down to Forks of Ivy down there at Metcalf's mill. Oz had a big water mill down there at Forks of Ivy with roller mills.
Take you a bunch of straw, and I catch it up here close to the heads, and I divide it in half. So it'll be half and half, and I always remember to point my right hand fingers towards my left wrist through the bunch, come around like this, wrap it back around the back of the head, and that binds right there against the bundle. Lay it down. I'll show you again. You see a nice bundle of your grain. This is about one bunch of wheat. Like when it goes on the ground, it stools out. This is about one bunch. So with your left hand up here next to the heads, divide it in half with your right hand. I point my left wrist with my right finger, go around, bring it across, and come back around the heads towards the back of your left hand, and that binds together on itself. like to wrap them real tight. They hold together better, and it's hard to tuck them inside your. See how good it holds together, and that allows you to shock it in the field and haul them into the barn or wherever you're gonna stack it to wait until it's thrashed. That's how you do it. Now, when you go to shock this week, and I ain't got nobody to argue with on the subject, so if you know more about it than I do, I want you to tell us. You stand your two bunches together. Come in on each side. Stand your two more. So they're pushing against each other. There's kind of a hole on this side. I'm going to put one more bunch right there. And I've heard that you want to, when you cap it, you put that grain on the cap bundle toward the prevailing wind because it keeps from blowing rain in on the rest of it. So you take another bundle, kind of break it over. Prevailing wind usually comes from the southwest, so let's cap it off this way. Spread that head out here. Do another bundle. Break it over. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm just going to fan it out. Both sides. See, looking down from the top, that's got the hole. All the bunches standing are covered. You say, well, Justro, what about this grain up here? Okay. You see how all these grains are kind of turned down now by the way they're hanging? Well, when that rain falls on them here, it's just going to run right off. Because see, them heads, them grains have got a coat on them. And when that rain hits, and you don't want it running this direction into the head, you want it running off this way. Just like when an ear of corn breaks over, the shuck keeps the rain off of it till you harvest it. Same goes for this grain here. If you do it right, the rain will run off, and of course these are getting all the rain, and they'll be up in the air, the first ones to dry when the sun comes out. That's how you do it.
Now by then, see, everybody had switched over to roller mills. That started back in the 1800s, and they used steel rolls instead of stones to grind their wheat. And the point of it was they figured out they could strip all the bran and everything off and separate out the endosperm of the wheat and have that real fine white flour bolted out. And they get the most out of the grain by using them roller mills. But what you ain't getting is the whole grain when you do that. And God put that grain together, and he made it up the way it needs to be for it to work good when you eat it. So roller mill flour is real nice, fine white flour. Do a lot of different things with it, but like I say, it got rid of the grain, the whole grain. You're just getting one part of it, see? And God knows what he's doing when he put all that together for us to eat. But anyway, he take it down there to Osses. I remember my grandpa saying one time he hauled his wheat down to Osses one Saturday with a horse and buggy. And that's probably about 15 miles, I guess. And he said one of his brother-in-laws, Herbert Chambers, I believe it was. Paul said he wasn't riding the buggy with him. Said Herbert walked all the way down there carrying a sack of wheat and then all the way back. It might not have been 15 miles, but it sure was 10 anyway. Said Herbert wouldn't ride with Paul in the buggy, walked and carried that wheat on his back. And they'd come back and they'd bake it. And Daddy said they had some people call it a mill gum, a mill box. It's a box with two sections in it. And it stands up, and it usually comes out, slopes out towards you on the front side. And it had a lid on top it'd raise up, and two sections in there. One section they'd dump their cornmeal in. In one section, they'd dump their flour in on each side, and they'd just go in there and dip it out when they wanted to make cornbread or biscuits. And that's how they done it. And I just imagine these hillsides covered with them big old pretty shocks of wheat standing there in the sunshine. Boy, I wished I could have seen that. But I come along, I reckon, and attended time. Thank you for watching us, and may the Lord bless you.